Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of Sirhan on X, coming to you live from Cincinnati, Ohio, in the United States. Hope everyone had themselves a wonderful 9th of January 2025. Hard to believe the 8 days of 2025 has gone real quickly. At least it has for me. Of course, probably because I'm stuck inside and the snowy conditions over here still. But of course, when the roads clear up, guess what's coming tomorrow? More snowy conditions. Oh, it's going to be a doozy because I got to drive in this thing tomorrow to my line of work. But if you guys out there around the area or any area with snow incoming, be safe when you have to travel on the roads. Don't travel unless you necessarily have to. Just use precautionary measures when necessary. That's what I tell everyone. Uh, it's a little better over here today, but I still have this thing going, so it keeps me warm through the winter weather. Keeps my heating bill down. I mean, my heating bill has been absolutely spectacular because of this over the last 25 years, but basically the turn of the century. Because when I put this house together and had this included, chop up some wood and get some logs, and as you can see, I'll turn it a little bit over here. Take some logs, throw them there, and just stay warm throughout the winter. Hope everyone's having themselves a wonderful night. Uh, some of the areas to touch on today, of course, the bit of a surprise in the Las Vegas Raiders. I keep thinking of them as the Oakland Raiders. The Las Vegas Raiders, with their coach GM firings, what's going on in the coaching search, and of course, everybody's favorite topic in the NFL, Bill Belichick, and of course, in the boxing business, two guys who are still ducking. And we talk about what probably that most unbreakable record in boxing history that probably will never be touched. And I'll talk about his place in history on top of it. Of course, as I said, we're going to start with what's going on in Vegas. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, as we know. But certainly Tom Telesco and Antonio Pierce won't be staying in Vegas because they got the boot over the last couple of days. The Telesco thing was a bit of a shocker because I thought they had a very sound 2024 NFL draft, especially we consider they drafted probably one of the better offensive players available in that draft, and Brock Bowers. You saw what he did. He had no real quarterback. I mean, Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew. What do you expect? Uh, and Antonio Pierce, a little weird, but I think, but it didn't help that he had the so-called Mahomes rules that he supposedly had on a podcast saying he was going to stop him. Of course, he got that great win on over Kansas City on Christmas 2023, but it didn't matter at the end of the day. Seems more, I guess, Tom Brady, who's now part owner of the, or whatever his role is in this particular organization, starting to have his imprints. He's going to want his own guy. I guess he decided to part ways with this. Of course, the Raiders organization has been a catastrophic mess since 2002 when the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, led by John Gruden, just dismantled them in the Super Bowl, going back to their years in Oakland. You guys know the story there. He had a fisticuffs with whatever the hell happened with Al Davis. Al Davis in Tampa Bay agreed to some kind of trade compensation package. The two met in that Super Bowl, and the Tampa Bay Bucks, led by Brad Johnson, just demolished the Raiders, and they haven't been anything relevant ever since. So it's been an ongoing issue with the Raiders, obviously. Of course, since the turn of the decade of the 2020s, this next coach will be their fifth head coach. You talk about John Gruden, who I thought was blackmailed. It was set up for whatever happened. Everybody knows the story. You guys can look at it. Of course, Rick Basaya, who I thought got the Raiders going in the right direction. They didn't want to keep him. Remember, he got them into the playoffs in 2021. Gave Cincinnati all they can handle until the Bengals won at the end. And I was surprised they let him go. Of course, Josh McDaniels, we know how much of a failure he was in Denver. That was just a bad hire. Place him with this, even though the players liked him. This seemed like they want to go into their own direction. I think, again, it has to do with probably Tom Brady wanting his own guy. So, again, the Las Vegas Raiders, they're a catastrophic mess right now. I mean, not as, the Jets might be a mess, but I think I found a team more messier, and that's probably the Raiders. Basically, they're just cleaning everything out. Their defensive coordinator, what's his name, Patrick Graham, they're not going to renew his contract. He's a free agent. They're talking about him coming to Cincinnati, which I think would be a perfect fit for the Bengals if they can get him as their defensive coordinator. And I mean, perfect. I mean, he would do wonders for that defense if they get him. But the Raiders, I think, are just going to do whatever they want. I'm sure they're going to try and get a Bill Belichick or even the hot commodity Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator of the Detroit Lions, which he's going to be a hot commodity. Aaron Glenn's going to be out there. and of course many others. So we'll see what it does. This mess in Las Vegas, I keep calling them Oakland. I don't know why. This mess in Las Vegas is going to take a lot of while to cleaning up. I think Tom Brady just realizes it's time to just start the whole thing from scratch. He wants to put his imprints on it, and I think that's what this is all about. We'll see where that goes. Of course, Tom Brady is one of the probably the premier winner of all athletes maybe ever. So we'll leave it to him, see if he knows what he's doing or not at that level. He did it as a quarterback for New England and Tampa, but we'll see if he does translate it to this. Speaking of the coaching searches, boatloads of opportunities here. I think the Jets, of course, they interviewed like 12 guys. I'm surprised they haven't called and hired me yet. The Bears, obviously, for Caleb Williams. He was linked to Ben Johnson for the longest time. Now they're talking about some sort of a trade for Mike Tomlin, which I think doesn't do any wonders for him. But I think Pittsburgh's not letting him go. He's just been a fixture over there in the black and gold Steeler nation. The Patriots, well, barring something catastrophic over the next few days, that's Mike Vrabel's job. That's who the Patriots wanted, and I believe that they're going to try and get him that wrapped up. If something crazy happens there, it's going to be an upset because everything points to Mike Vrabel going to New England. That's a no-brainer. Trying to think what else is available. Saints, I know, is available. The Tennessee general manager position after they fired Ron Cathon, who I thought was set up to fail because after the whole A.J. Brown fiasco in Tennessee, you talk about, I'm trying to think who else was out there. Of course, Jacksonville, they're doing their own coaching search. Of course, there's going to be a lot of assistant people. Teams are going to fill assistant voids. Even the name Steve Spagnuolo has been brought up, which actually is a bit of a stunner to me. Everyone's talking about him going to the Raiders. That's not happening. Forget that. Maybe he goes to the Jets because he has a connection with New York. He knows how New York is, being a New York hometown individual. So maybe he goes there. This is probably the most wildest, coaching turnover in terms of high level named head coaches and assistants I've seen in quite some time. There's going to be some real big time moving parts. And we're talking about just head coaches. We're talking like coordinators, even a couple of spots for general manager. This thing's going to be all over the place. Of course, one guy I wanted here in Cincinnati was Robert Saleh. I thought he would have been the perfect fit, but now he's talking about him going back to San Francisco after they let their defensive coordinator go, which makes all the sense because San Francisco boofed when they let him go. And he's talking about giving him all the bag and necessary. So I think he winds up going back there, which was a bad mistake by San Francisco letting him go. And it was a double the mistake that the Jets fired him because we know he was not the problem. As long as Woody Johnson's their owner, the Jets are always going to be the Jets. I mean, my God, they had to interview Rex Ryan for a coaching position. Shoot, why don't you just call me and offer me a $10 million contract to coach a team? I'd take it in a minute. I mean, that's how much of a clown show you guys are right now in New York. I mean, I don't know how to be better than Robert Saleh, but give me $10 million to coach a clown show and a coward at quarterback. I'll take it. So there's a lot of moving parts in the NFL. The coaching staff realm is going to start to transpire here once the season's over. So we're going to put the pen to paper, put together, dot the I's, cross the T's. We'll see how that goes. Just with the big names available for this year, it's just absolutely crazy. I haven't seen anything like this in a while. Some of the jobs and some of the positions are real attractive. And it's good. And some names out there are real attractive. It's going to be interesting to see the mixes that comes out of this. Don't be surprised if the Raiders make a play for Ben Johnson after all of this. I predicted he was going to go to Chicago, which I think a guy like Caleb Williams might be what the doctor ordered for him, especially for the offensive line like Ben Johnson. Now they're talking about him don't be interviewing a couple other places. Don't be surprised if the Raiders do everything they can to get him. And of course, another hot commodity is, of course, the GOAT of coaches of all time, Bill Belichick. Can people just leave this guy alone? Let the guy coach whatever. People have a problem with him dating a woman like the difference is like three times the age difference between the two of them. Let the guy be a little bit. Of course, there's this foregone conclusion that the Raiders are going to get him should they fire and do what they had to do. I don't know where people are coming up with this foregone conclusion. They're going to get Bill Belichick because of Tom Brady being there. where's a foregone conclusion? Let me remind you, he had a job in Atlanta wrapped up, of course, because the moron Robert Kraft was apparently called the Atlanta office, and the deal was off. I don't know what the hell Robert Kraft's problem is, other than he's a bona fide coward to do what he did. But at the same time, Belichick's at the University of North Carolina. He's probably going to start his. Actually, I read this earlier. I don't know who was it said it, that he's in Jersey starting his recruiting process. Unless someone throws the bank at him, or kind of ridiculous number, expect him to stay at UNC this season and for at least the next couple years. That thing's gonna be turned around. But I think after what happened with him and the fiasco in Atlanta, which was a job from how I read it that he wanted, I think he's gonna stay in the college field for now, unless someone blows him away with an offer that he basically can't refuse. Of course, everybody talks about the Raiders might do it simply because Tom Brady is there, but I don't know. I don't know if they're going to do that. Everybody's drawing their own conclusions because of it. Where are we coming up with these conclusions? I don't know. We'll see. It's going to be a crazy offseason in terms of the coaching positions, not just head coach, but also general managers, coordinators. I know after Elena Ruma was fired here in Cincinnati, a couple of others need to be filled. I said the perfect guy is Patrick Graham. If it's not Patrick Graham, then it's a failure. I'll just leave it at that. So I'll probably talk more of the NFL stuff later on tonight because I have a spaces I'm going to be joining here in about an hour 45 minutes. You guys know who you are. I talked with you earlier. I look forward to joining you guys there. I'll give you my opinions on some things. And of course, we're going to segue to more of a boxing eccentric part. And of course, one of the real interesting stories I read today, or actually I heard from one of the premier people in the social media boxing community, my dude Ring IQ. I didn't even know this. I guess David Benavidez is contemplating going up to cruiserweight after he fights David Morrell. This is for all the morons who think Canelo Alvarez is ducking David Benavidez. Who's doing the ducking now? I said this before. I'll say it again. David Benavidez had his chance to get this shot at Canelo Alvarez. He tucked his tail between his legs, went backwards, and has gone backwards ever since. All he had to do is tell the idiot that's governing body to say, activate my mandatory clause. He didn't. Once it was talked about, he went up to 175 to fight the corpse of Alexander Gvozdyk and carried him the distance. Actually, before that fight, I didn't even know Alexander Gvozdyk was even fighting. But he carried him the distance inexcusably for no reason. And now he was talking about fighting just the corpse of Jesse Hart until the Morrell fight came through. And then, mind you, he was also the mandatory for the winner of the upcoming rematch between Bivol and Better Beef. And now he's ducking that to go to cruiserweight. He didn't even duck the fight. He ducked and ate himself out of a major payday against Canelo Alvarez. For now. I'm not saying the fight's never going to happen because I'd say never say never. But for now, if he's really going to go to cruiserweight after Morrell, he ate himself out of that fight. He ate himself out of dollars. That's not a guy who doesn't have the balls to quit cocaine. Once actually had a championship belt, missed it on the scales because he didn't have the balls to quit cocaine. That's why. I said this before when it comes to him. To me, he's a one-trick pony. Let's start with this for beginners. He's on the PBC banner, and if you're backing David Benavidez, you're backing the PBC banner, and we know how pathetic the PBC banner is. So if you're a David Benavidez fan, you're basically as pathetic as the PBC banner, so shut up. How are you going to tell me Canelo Alvarez is ducking him when he had the belts, and now this guy moves up to 75 to carry the corpse of Alexander Gvozdyk the distance without a valid explanation? And now it's talking about going to cruiserweight to possibly fight the winner of a potential Ramirez-Dorticos fight, which I'll touch on here in a second. Who's doing the ducking now? And who's being the coward now? I mean, Canelo Alvarez offered him to step into the ring after he beat Jaime Munguia. David Benavidez took the coward's way out and backpedaled, probably because there was no cocaine lines for him to snort. But if he's going up to cruiserweight, he's basically eating himself out of big paydays in the 160 and 175 pound division, because he was the mandatory for Canelo, also the mandatory for the upcoming rematch between Dimitri Bivol and Artur Better Beef, and he wants to leave that so he can eat himself up to the cruiserweight division. Have fun with that. I said on a show last summer, he's a bona fide coward because of it, And basically, it's showing here again. I would be surprised at some point he challenges someone at heavyweight because I don't know what the hell this guy's trying to do. I mean, does this guy even have a work ethic? I saw the face off between him and David Morrell. David Morrell already looks like he's ready to take on David Benavidez. David Benavidez doesn't. I'll talk about the fight when closer to time comes. I think it was like February 25th. That's set up. I think it should be a good doozy. I'm not going to make my prediction or preview yet. But seeing from the face off, if you ask me based on the face off, give me David Morrell. Good luck, David Benavidez, because David Morrell is not going to be easy for you. I'll say that. I'll say that, especially when we consider how you looked at the face-off with David Morrell. And I talked about Zurdo Ramirez. Now it's come out he's fighting the KO artist, where the frick his nickname is Dorticos. Another ploy to duck Jai Opetaia, but it's actually not a bad fight. Dorticos, I always liked Dorticos as a fighter, as a punch. Of course, Zurdo Ramirez. Last time he was relevant, he got boxed off by Dimitri Bivol. Since then, he's won fake championships while ducking Jai Opetaia. Dorticos might have a puncher's chance in this because I haven't seen Dorticos in a while. I liked him when he first came up. Decent skill, nice punch. The only thing Zurdo Ramirez has right now is experience, but how good is that experience going to be when you're basically 2 divisions over your best fighting weight? And you're basically collecting paper championships while avoiding the main gun in Jai Opetaia. Here's the thing. I won't have a problem with this fight as long as Opetaia is next. I know Opetaia just had a solid win over David Naika. Good sound fighter, give an honest effort, but Opetaia is a top 7 pound-for-pound fighter. As long as Ramirez fights Opetaia next, all's going to be forgiven. But after Dorticos, Opetaia has to be next, period. No excuses. No more ducking, no more being a coward. That's what I have to say about Zurdo Ramirez. I'll touch more on that fight later because the cruiserweight division is getting a little interesting. Now there's Badou Jack in that division. He might fight Opetaia next from how I understood it. Maybe a mini tournament there. Opetaia versus Jack, Zurdo versus Dorticos. The 2 winners collide, which I think is still going to be Zurdo and Opetaia. Make a tournament out of that. I think it would do pretty good. Remember the WBSS they had in that division not too long ago? It was good stuff. Do something like that with those 4. I think it would do good business and good stuff for that cruiserweight division, which hasn't had anything of significance for a while. As I said, the only 2 guys that have done anything of significance in that division ever are Evander Holyfield and Alexander Usyk. The winner of that one could put him, especially if it's Jai Opetaia, which I think it will be, puts him in that conversation, and we'll see where it goes from there. But probably the most buzz I've seen in this cruiserweight division, maybe ever. Last time I saw any kind of buzz was when Vasily Girov fought James Toney in 2003. A great instant classic, a great modern classic. But we know the cruiserweight division lacks in total real history outside of Usyk and Holyfield, maybe David Haye. But real buzz going on in that division, and it's actually pretty cool because the heavyweight division is going to tank after Usyk did the world a favor and demolished Tyson Fury twice because Usyk was talking about going down to cruiserweight to clean up all of this once it's all said and done. Talking about Opetaia, which I think will be a fascinating fight. Probably the only guy I can see beating Opetaia is the great top pound-for-pound fighter, Alexander Usyk. So I'll just divulge into that somewhere down the line. I'll wait for everything to come up. All of it's all verbiage. We know how verbiage is in the sport of boxing because we just seen what happened when Tio just became a ducking coward himself when he ducked Sirius Mateo. And everything's all bark, no bite until the 2 I see it. And it's been that way forever. I wish people in the business side of boxing get their head out of their butt and actually back up what they say. Because it sometimes becomes a joke. That's why I walked out of the community once. So, but don't worry, I'm staying here this time. And people are going to get it with both barrels from me. I already took care of one scrap earlier this week. If they want to be the second, I'll have at it. Now, speaking about the long tenured champions, maybe one of the more unbreakable records expanded its own history 83 years ago today at Madison Square Garden in New York City. This was the rematch between Joe Louis and Buddy Baer. The younger brother of Max Baer is none other than Buddy Baer. Not only was he just a fighter, he actually was played a role in multiple films in the 50s and 60s after his career was over. Actually, was also I think involved in the early part of World War II as an American veteran. I think he was in the U.S. Army, if I'm correct. Somebody can correct me. Also was a musician in his hometown of Denver, Colorado. Had some couple nice joints in New York and Baltimore where he uh, was actually a baritone voice singer in those particular environments. Can't remember the establishments off the top of my head. And of course, Joe Louis, as we all know, the second greatest heavyweight of all time behind Muhammad Ali. But at this point, had the distinction of the greatest because guys like Ray Robinson and Muhammad Ali hadn't even begun to scratch the surface yet. Or actually, Ali wasn't even. I don't think Ali was even born at this point. This is a rematch of an action-packed fight that took place a year before, where Buddy Baer actually floored Louis through the ropes and looked like he was going to shock the world. But Joe Louis gave an honest effort despite being floored himself 3 times afterward. And the fight was stopped at the end of the 6th round because Buddy Baer's manager didn't want to leave the corner because he felt like the referee, his fighter was hit after the bell and the referee didn't want to do anything about it. And the referee basically just disqualified Buddy Baer and Joe Louis was crowned the winner. It was a pretty darn good fight back and forth between both standouts at the time. Very action-packed, sort of like a Foreman Lyle-ish, maybe not quite that level, but it was when you consider Louis was down early. Looked like Baer was going to pull this off in the first round because Louis was through the ropes. Louis comes back, floors him 3 times, and basically at the end of the 6th round, the punch at the bell, which the manager of Buddy Baer, who wouldn't leave the corner because he felt like the punch happened after the bell, and as a result, the referee disqualified Buddy Baer because the manager wouldn't leave the ring in the appropriate manner. In between the two, Joe Louis gets a win over Billy Conn. You guys know the standout Billy Conn is 10 years at light heavyweight, solid heavyweight career. But going into this rematch, is more looked like it was like a cash out for Buddy Baer because basically it is one of the longest tenured reign in boxing history, which was Joe Louis. One right hand, Baer was down, party was over. Joe Louis wins 20th consecutive successful title defense of the one belt heavyweight championship, not fake championships like Zurdo Ramirez and Daniel Dubois. The real one belt undisputed championship where one belt was winner take all. Who held that? Joe Louis. He wins this fight on a first round knockout. Championship successful title defense number 20. And that reign would expand to 25 down the line. We talk about some of the all-time great, all-time unbreakable records. Maybe for boxing, if you're talking about doing this in one division, because that's what Joe Louis did. One division, 25 successful title defenses. Good luck trying to touch this. I mean, this guy, not just 25 title defenses. He did this in a span of over 12 and a half years. And he beat a bunch of who's who in the sport. You talk about Buddy Baer, beat his brother Max Baer, where he knocked him out in the 4th round in 35. Primo Carnera, of course, when he won the title from Max Schmeling in the rematch, we know the significance of that. James J. Braddock, and list goes on and on. Of course, Billy Conn, Tony Galento is a sound fighter. Of course, Buddy Baer beat Galento to get the shot at Joe Louis the first time. That's one thing people don't know. You're talking about his time as a 25 successful title defenses, 21 of those by knockout. To put this in a sports perspective, what he did was like the equivalent of Joe DiMaggio's 55-game hit streak or that long 80-plus game win streak on the University of California, Los Angeles basketball team, led by John Wooden. Of course, they had Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Bill Walton at center. That's Joe Louis's record, and no one is even going to touch it. It's one thing we could go 2 to 3 weight divisions and get to that point. I'm talking about doing it at one division, one belt, clean out your division. Didn't only clean it out once, clean it out twice. Because that's what he did it the first time. He actually got hot in the back end of the 40s when guys like Walcott and even Ezra Charles came up there. I mean, he didn't beat Charles, but give it because for many reasons. But when it got hot, he stepped up, and he stepped up big. 12 years, 25 successful title defenses, 21 of them by knockout. I mean, that lethal right hand, especially the one that Paced Max Schmeling way back when to become an American hero. We know the story with all of that. His career is second to none, and that record, nobody has touched it. Nobody has. I don't care what everybody says. We're not talking about 25 successful title defenses, winning multiple paper championships in multiple divisions. We're talking real championships in one weight class. Clean it out. Joe Louis did that. Nobody's touching it. In his place in history, I said all along, the second greatest heavyweight of all time behind Muhammad Ali. In my so-called Mount Rushmore, everybody likes to call it this here in America, in my top four. Ray Robinson, we know what the deal with that is. Muhammad Ali, we know what the deal with that is. As I said, Joe Louis. And Henry Armstrong, the only fighter to win 3 world titles simultaneously, 3 legit one-belt championships simultaneously in 3 weight classes. That's the gold standard. That is the gold standard all time. Got records that are not going to be touched in that sport. Joe Louis is not going to do that either, because that record is platinum stone, especially when you consider the corruption of the governing bodies and how people put value in fake championships, like they do with Zurdo Ramirez and Daniel Dubois. He did it in a one belt era where when he got the one belt, you were head and shoulders above everybody else. That was Joe Louis. From 1937 to 1949, it was a Joe Louis era. And Joe Louis basically just had that era basically on lockdown. From what he did to Max Schmeling all the way to the end when he got his revenge on Jersey Joe Walcott when he knocked him out to end his reign. He basically, retired. Now, of course, this is because people had it out for the guy for whatever reason. He had to come back because there were some issues with the government, and he had 2 losses to Ezra Charles and Rocky Marciano. That's not talked about, but it's not worth talking about because 12 years, 25 successful title defenses is the Joe Louis era. Nobody's going to touch that. We're not talking about multi divisions. We're talking one belt, one division, clean out the era. That's what Joe Louis did. We're probably never going to. It's going to be hard to see something like that ever again because too many people put value in fake belts like the ones worn by Daniel Dubois and Zurdo Ramirez. But that's what's happened. Everyone wants to have a belt. Every fight now is for some kind of belt I never even heard of. I mean, the 3 letters and some goofy letters and some goofy colors. It comes out of nowhere when a fight is made. Oh, it's for this belt. Oh, it's for that belt. Joe Louis is turning in his grave right now, thinking about this, because at a time when belts mattered, one belt, winner takes all. And Marvin Hagler, before he passed, wanted to see it go back to that era. Forget it. That's not happening. Because people like Mauricio Suleiman and Francisco Valcarcel, Gilberto Mendoza, Daryl Peoples want to discredit, the heads of the 4 garbage corrupt governing bodies who had a sick-headed reason and wanted to ruin it for everybody for whatever reason. I mean, you can go 4-belt undisputed, but it doesn't matter because actually the word undisputed sort of doesn't have the value it once had. Where we had the 2-belt, even the 2-belt, the 3-belt era had more stability than it did then because it was actually more prestige and more high-level greatness where actually dollars weren't the primary figure. It was about greatness. The value of the belt has been diminished. But we have people in the community who want to value belts more than fighters, especially when it comes to defending David Benavidez, Daniel Dubois, and Zurdo Ramirez, who have fake championships or fake rankings because of manipulation. Fighters like Joe Louis, Muhammad Ali, and Ray Robinson are turning in their graves at you guys. I just hope you guys understand that. Because that's why I always bring up one belt eras. The belts have been diminished and diminished bad. Even the fighters want to drop belts on their own recognizance, like we saw Usyk and even Canelo Alvarez do recently, and I don't blame them because belts don't have value anymore. They don't. Maybe to the fighter on the come up, maybe. But you talk about an established fighter, it doesn't. The value of the belt has been diminished for the longest time. But when guys like Joe Louis held it, when one belt mattered, you were the king of the world. You were the king of the world at any level. 12 years, 25 successful title defenses. That record is not going to be touched for many, many reasons. Like I said, you talk about the equivalent of the 55-game hit streak of Joe DiMaggio and the UCLA record with John Wooden coaching Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Bill Walton. That's how you put all that in a sports perspective. When you talk about unbreakable records in all of sports, That's up there. I could go on more Unbreakable records, but I would have to have about a 7-hour show to talk about which ones I think would be unbroken, because my list would literally stuff my notebook pages and stuff my laptop, because there's a lot of them. Ugh. And that will wrap up another edition of Sirhan on X. I will be off for the entire 3-day weekend. I will be back Monday to go over the college playoff and the 6 wild card playoff games. Hope everyone has themselves a wonderful rest of the 9th of January 2025. Until then, take care, stay warm, and as always, make self-care your number one priority in life. If you take care of yourself first before you take care of anything or anybody else. Because if you don't take care of yourself first, nothing else matters. Have a good night, and God bless.